So, The Conjuring has finally come to an end. Or has it? Do they ever now with horror? We don't know. I mean, will we get another version of them? When will this be remade? When will they decide to do another installment? I don't know. Yeah, lots of questions, but let's focus on this one, starting with the IMDb plot. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren take on one last terrifying case involving mysterious entities they must confront. Okay, that almost seems like the summary for all these movies. But yeah, this one, recently released. Obviously, I don't know, huge twists and turns here. I'm not going to get too far into that, so I don't think there'll be any spoilers here. But, a little comment, I guess, on The Conjuring overall before I really get into this one. I think definitely this started off well. Obviously, two people and two characters that are, make it fairly obvious and fairly good to, place to start a horror movie with. And what, has become a small franchise here. It should also, branch. I guess I shouldn't say small. Maybe, an okay sized franchise with the number of movies it's had, and then it's kind of branched off and had other things like Annabelle and The Nun and so forth. So I guess it's definitely made its mark. So again, has it really come to an end? Are they using this just to get people to see it, and maybe another movie to come? Maybe it's maybe the last for Patrick and Vera. Maybe it's the last ones they want to do, but maybe opens the door for maybe The Conjuring in a different way, different actors, whatever. We know it never ends in horror sometimes. Stuff that should end, it doesn't necessarily end, and stuff that you want to end, just goes on and on and on, and we get remakes and this and reboots and blah blah blah. Interestingly enough, this one introduces their daughter, more of a focus on her, this one, than any of the other ones. So, we may see, The Conjuring Judy in the future or something like that. You just never don't know. So anyway, I don't want to get, too detailed into the summary and what is going on here. Basically, it is what it is. If you've seen any other Conjuring movies, someone needs help. They've moved into a new home, and weird stuff is starting to happen, and the Warrens, they kind of get involved. Do they want to take the case? Not really. Do they end up with the case? Yes, because if not, we wouldn't have a movie. And then kind of strange stuff happens, and it kind of builds and tries to be suspenseful in the end and so forth. And then, I think, one of the things that kind of is maybe a little bit different and kind of maybe takes the focus a little bit is the introduction really of Judy and really spending some time with her and, introducing, or getting into the fact that she may have some of the same feelings in ways that her mom does, and kind of, her mom is kind of the lead here in kind of dealing with the spirits and feeling the spirits, and then, it's the dad that just kind of keeps everything together and saves them when thing really the stuff hits the ceiling. So she's kind of getting tied into this and kind of maybe having some of those same things. So the movie does spend some time with her and feeling that out, and obviously the parents, especially the mom, has mixed feelings about that, and wants to make sure that if she is, that she's dealing with it, that she understands how to deal with it and is safe. Obviously, there's concern about her safety and so forth. So, we've spent a lot of time through the other movies kind of seeing that the couple be there for each other, and definitely in those high intense moments, especially later in the film. Usually one of them is always in danger by whatever the entity or demon is. But now we have another person, and so now both of them not only are looking out for each other, but looking out for their daughter as well. So we definitely have, that element. So it's a little bit added there and whatever. But with that, I think, they've subtracted a little bit by, not, it didn't seem like it was so much into the jump scares and so much into that. And it almost just felt like maybe the same, but not as much. Like I said, when we read the summary there, it's kind of what builds what is behind every one of these movies. But this one just seemed to be, almost, going back to maybe the basics of it all. Just, a case and, you know, presenting, there's something in the house, there's something there spooking people. There was a decent moment here or there. But I don't think, a franchise that's kind of, known for at least having a decent, I'm not going to say that I usually fall out of my seat or anything like that, but at least some decent attempts at scares. I didn't think, they went full born on this one in trying to do that. I think, maybe they got wrapped up with this being the final, supposed final chapter and whatever. And, maybe wanted to maybe dig in a little bit deeper with the characters and then with the daughter and so forth. And maybe not emphasize so much the scaring the audience thing, or really give a solid effort of that. The ending was okay. We had the typical intense moments where, the demon or the spirit, whatever you want to call it, is kind of released and is really going into the fury, and then they have to survive the whatever's going on, and the chaos of the situation and so forth. But I don't know. I didn't think that, they presented anything new. It was kind of the same, and it was even, maybe less of the same, and so forth. Obviously, the two actors here, they do a fabulous job. They've really nailed these characters down. So you would expect it. I don't think they gave any even weaker performance just because it's the last one. I think they were both solid yet again. They're both very good actors to begin with, so that's fine. But I just think that maybe it was like, okay, well, we're doing one more movie, so we're just going to milk whatever we can get out of it. The movie made a ton of money from what I remember. I don't know if it flashes there or not, but if I remember correctly, it may even be ranked as one of the most highest grossing. If I'm not mistaken, I think I read that. If I think this was the movie. And so forth, but obviously it is a well-known franchise all around the world, lots of different places and so forth. So I could see that, and just because it makes X amount of money doesn't mean it's a good movie or not. And it is a good movie, but when you compare it to the others and compare it to what they've done in the past, I think it's a letdown. And I think as I kind of scanned through and thought about what I saw from people say, I think a lot of people kind of felt that way as well. I don't think I'm going out of bounds here and going off on my own different kind of review here. I think people respect the franchise and what it's done, and respect the two actors here and so forth, but didn't think that they, I guess, went out in a huge way, or went out in a different way, or went out in a spectacular way. It just became just another movie to add to the bundle, so that when you get the DVD, it's just another bundle instead of 3, it's 4 or 5 or whatever, how many it ended up being in total. It's not going to stand out. It's nowhere close to beating probably any of the other movies. But I guess a chance for you, I guess, if you're a fan of it, to say goodbye, to see them one last time and so forth, which what it kind of just seemed to be. It's kind of like, see them on another case. It said it's their most terrifying. I don't think it was more terrifying. I think it was the previous one seemed a little bit more crazier. The one that was a little more focused on the boy that got possessed. That seemed a little bit wild and crazy to me. And then of course remember the first one. So I don't think that this went into any great territory in that realm. So I think I'm going to go along with everybody else and say that maybe a solid movie, but didn't maybe reach the heights of some of the other stuff that was done. So with that, I think at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one probably 2.5 pools of blood, give it some respect or whatever. Maybe it didn't even deserve that. But, again, solid movie all around. The acting is good and everything like that. But definitely, maybe not up to the standard that you might expect from this franchise. And maybe they, again, you don't know what the thoughts are, with them going into it. But, with it being the last one, maybe they were just trying to get the last squeeze out of it. But with that, it is a little bit sad. And when you kind of have that and whatever, but then you make a lot of money, you really wonder, again, is it going to be their last one or not, what they do. Obviously, it hasn't always translated to the other things that have spun off of it, making a lot of money. Some have, some haven't. Some been good, some been bad. So obviously, I think in in this universe, we'll probably see more. But maybe this truly is the end for them. I don't know. Depending on the money, we'll see. So with that, again, 2.5 pools of blood for The Conjuring. That's all it's going to conjure up this time. And with that, horrorsquarereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all of my reviews, written in videos, certainly tons of video reviews for a while now. So you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below. Feel free to reach out to me there. And definitely in the comment section, if you have thoughts on The Conjuring ending, this movie, and so forth. Maybe you thought it was really, really good. But you're still sad to see it go, please, feel free to throw that in there in the bottom. So with that, I'll catch you in the next review, horror fans.